a few years ago when you used to watch these old movies, one thing that I noticed as I watched some of the older movies is that everybody was smoking. It seemed like back in maybe the 20s, 30s, and 40s, and part of the 50s, just in natural scenes when it was not necessary and it did not necessarily contribute anything to the strip. But all the stars were smoking, the women were smoking, so I guess you would say that it was fashionable. Well, it was fashionable, but it was not healthy, and then I'm sure that it was a trend during the time, because once people saw all the stars smoking, then because they felt like it was fashionable, then I think that enticed and motivated other individuals to smoke. But according to Miss Fox, whom I have with me today, and some other people, it might be fashionable, but it's not healthy and it's not good for you. So today I'm more than a little pleased to have with me Miss Valerie Fox, who's going to give you her title. I see respiratory, so I guess smoking affects her respiration.
I guess it does.
Yeah, and we're going to just chat about, maybe a little bit about history, the different kinds, and whether or not smoking has increased over the years. This is a call to action.
A call to action.
I'm your host, Alex Habersham. And like I said, I have Miss Valerie Fox with me, who, what you would call you, a clinical educator.
That's correct.
Dealing with respiration.
That's correct.
Now, talk a little bit about respiration, what that deals with.
Well, that's when the air goes in and the air goes out.
That's pretty good.
Of course, everybody does breathing passively. You're breathing, I'm breathing. We don't really think about it.
Right. And it's no telling how many breaths we take over a lifetime.
That's correct. That's correct.
It's in the million. Well, how is that? Well, let's talk generally about your job first, and then we'll deal with more specifically.
Okay. I'm a respiratory therapist by trade. So I went to school to get a degree in respiratory therapy. I went to, at the time it was Macon College, and its name's changed quite a few times since I graduated. I graduated back in 1999 with my degree. I've been working at Navicent Health since I graduated, and over the years healthcare has changed. When I started my career, it was to work at the bedside and do therapy for patients to help their breathing or help them manage their breathing, or whatever a physician said, hey, I need you to do this, we're going to help this patient out, this is the type of treatment or therapy we're going to do. That's how I started my career. As my career has grown and as healthcare has grown, there's a lot more need for education. My job is not only to help a patient, but to help them understand what's going on with their lungs and what I'm doing or going to try to do to help them get better.
Right.
So I've grown in that aspect in my years of experience.
Yeah.
So my job is to help patients, family members sometimes understand. I also work not only with my customers, but my customer may be a nurse that's beginning in the field that has questions.
Okay.
A physician that's beginning in the field that has questions. A lot of times over the years our equipment has changed, so I have to adapt and learn new equipment. As new equipment comes out and new technology and new therapies, I have to help train those coming after me. To understand, what is this doing different from what we've done in the past, and how is this therapy going to help this situation? So that's kind of the basis of where I come. I also work out in the community. My job is to basically answer questions when we get phone calls. If someone calls and says, hey, I got a question about how to take this medication for my lungs, can you answer that question? I help field patients' questions about their therapies and their medications. I also go out into the community and help students at schools. I educate. Sometimes I go to the elementary schools and middle schools and high schools and do health fairs and help educate what is a respiratory therapist, what do you do, so to kind of help grow our field per se.
Well, one thing for certain, breathing is fairly important.
It is fairly important.
So
Yes.
you've got a phenomenal job. Let's start with this. I heard you mention lungs.
Mm-hmm.
And since we want to include things that are good for respiration and things that are not good for respiration as it relates to health, let's talk about smoking first. I started with in my introduction that stars used to smoke. You just saw it all day in the movies.
And you still do.
Yeah, I know. Not as much though. I don't
Not
think.
as much, but you still see it.
But they still haven't quit. Thanks for that observation. So, let's talk a little bit, and then you know what? You kind of threw me off because I was assuming that smoking is on the decrease, or has been on the decrease over the years. But as soon as I said that, you said nope. So, talk a little bit about it to the extent that you can. I know you're not a statistician, but the general attitude is that smoking has not decreased.
I would say overall, there are so many more options to smoking nowadays, so that if you compass smoking in general, yes, smoking in general has not decreased. Cigarette smoking, however, numbers may be very differently from, your other options out there. And I say that because we all know they continue to raise taxes and prices to try to basically make it, I guess, in all intents purposes, more difficult or less popular to purchase tobacco products. But however, now that you have options that have come around to quote unquote help a patient wean themselves from smoking or try to quit smoking. You have the electronic cigarettes that are out there that physicians may prescribe. From that, we've gone to vaping now, which is very popular and has grown popular, especially with the younger generation. Smoking has had that term of, well, it's stinky. It's stinky and it gets on your clothes, and that's not always the fashionable part of it. However, vaping, on the other hand, is cool, and they can put scents on it, and it can smell good, and it just has that less stigma of that smell and issue that people might complain about in a crowd or in an area.
So vaping is the new cool.
Vaping is the new cool. Yeah. That's right. So, a lot of times your restaurants and city ordinances would say, oh, there's no smoking in this area, there's no smoking here. We no smoking at the hospital. And years ago, even back before I started at the hospital, patients could smoke in their rooms.
Wow.
Employees could smoke in the hospital, in their break rooms and where they worked. We still have some patients, I think, that sneak and try to smoke in the bathroom, don't get me wrong. But that was allowed, and we have a no smoking campus now, so to try to deter and get away from that. However, with vaping, it's a lot of times a lot less odor. It doesn't smell like smoke, so you'll see people doing vaping more out in the community, in your restaurants and places, because it's not smoke or the true smoke that's termed with cigarette smoking.
So it's mist?
It's more of a mist or a vapor.
Vapor.
Yeah, a vapor. Yeah, so that's why they call it vaping. It's a vapor. So it disappears more quickly. If you're out and about, you may get a whiff of something that smells like, I guess, almost like a perfume or a fruity smell. That could be somebody vaping right behind you. You don't realize that's what it is. So it's more common that you see people doing that on the sly. Also, because a cigarette, what happens? How do you have to get a cigarette going?
You gotta light it.
You gotta light it. So you gotta get a lighter out or matches. You gotta light it. And of course, when you have a cigarette, most people don't take a puff and put it out. It goes until it's all burned out. With vaping, there's no lighting. They can just take a puff and they're done. So
Yeah.
it can be done more secretively. I'll put it that way. So.
Now, does it have a battery?
Sometimes.
Or is it just a mechanical?
There are some types that are battery. There's so many different brands out, but there are some types that are a battery or mechanism where you may turn it to click it on. Or
Okay, I got a question for you. Is it harmful? What I want to do is when we come back, I want to talk about the comparison between, and they both are harmful, right?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yes. Anything you put into your lungs that's not supposed to go in
Except the
there.
God-given air.
That's right. It's not good.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about, how harmful it is and how it harms one's lungs when we come back. This is a call to action.
A call to action.
I'm your host, Alex Havisham, interviewing Miss Valerie Fox, who is in respiratory therapist. So I couldn't say it. We'll be right back. We're back. I'm your host of A Call to Action, Alex Havisham, here today with a very, very important, significant interview, because you can't learn too much about your health, and you can't learn too much about actions and behavior that can influence your health, either positively or negatively. And I'm more than a little happy to have with me Miss Valerie Fox, who's a respiratory therapist, and we're talking about smoking and some other things that affect being able to suck air in and push it out effectively. And of course, one of the things that we are discussing is smoking and the other elements, the new trends in inhaling and exhaling. And so we were talking about the lungs, and I said, well, is it bad for you? And her comment was that anything that you bring into your lungs that's not really designed to be in there, or that should not be in there, is bad for you. So talk a little bit about how these actions affect one's lungs.
So one thing in particular, besides smoking, that someone actively does, smoking's an active thing. You do it actively. Secondhand smoke can be just as bad. So, an individual may be choosing to harm themselves, but in the process harm others around. Whether it be other bystanders, kids, not only that, smoking, but things in the air in general that's in your environment. Smoke in the air, meaning wildfires, things that burn, not good for your lungs. Chemicals. We see people that come in and work environment, things that they've breathed in, whether it's working in a paper mill or a wood chipping plant where they're wood products and shavings and dust. In years past, I'm sure many years ago, when asbestos was big, we didn't know that asbestos was not good for you to breathe it in like we do today. So, as technology's changed and healthcare's changed, we've learned that, the things that you breathe in can ultimately harm your lungs, whether you're doing it directly or passively. So it's a lot of importance played upon being aware of your surroundings, what you do to yourself directly versus, where your surroundings are and what you're being exposed to.
What happens to the lungs? I mean, let's talk about the ill effect. Now, the smoking and the chemicals and all of those things that one inhales have pretty much the same effect on damaging the lungs?
Some are very similar. The cigarette itself, the way it is produced, is not just tobacco. It's not just rolled up tobacco leaves and you're lighting them and smoking them. It's things and chemicals that have been placed and used in that product. It's going through a processing plant. I'm sure you've probably heard back when you were little that you just go outside to the tobacco patch and get some leaves and roll them up and smoke them, right?
Rabbit tobacco.
That's old rabbit tobacco. I get many patients that tell me that's when they started smoking, was and my uncle gave me some rabbit tobacco.
Yeah.
So that may be when it started, but of course we know that over the years, that's part of changing and making money and doing things is production, and how can we do things and produce it and make it better and do things and make things better for the almighty dollar sometimes. So over years, of course, tobacco's gone from rabbit tobacco to processed, and in that process you have chemicals that are used in those devices to make cigarettes. So you're not just breathing in tobacco, you're breathing in the other chemicals that have been brought into that process and using filters. You take a cigarette and you're smoking it, it's coming through a filter. So there's things in that filter that's processing that you're inhaling as well. That people don't realize when they're introduced to it, that they're not just getting tobacco, they're not doing something naturally, they're getting a lot of chemicals induced in it.
Wow.
So that process with smoke, if you're inhaling it, just direct smoke, produces tar in the lungs. So that damages the lungs. That allows the lungs to not work. And our lungs are designed to transport oxygen to the rest of our body. We breathe the oxygen in, and the goal of the lungs is to place that oxygen in our blood system to get it to your fingers, your toes, all your organs. So anytime you're damaging your lungs, you're decreasing that process working. So that's going to be less oxygen that's going to get to your brain for you to think, to your lungs for those to work properly, to your heart, to your other organs. So that's one way you can damage. You can also be, like I said, working in textiles or a harmful environment where you're breathing in chemicals. Maybe you clean houses for a living, and you're working with a lot of cleaning products that can also damage your lungs. So you just have to be more mindful and be aware that what you breathe in really does, it's supposed to benefit your body, not break it down.
Wow.
So, and to answer your original question, tar is what's produced usually from cigarettes. If you're around other products, it may not cause a buildup of tar in your system. It can actually cause your lungs to harden or shut down or not open and close functionally as well. So it depends on what it is that you're breathing in as to how it actually breaks those lungs down.
Okay, that leads us right into vaping.
Mm-hmm.
You got a fad, and it's very popular, and a whole lot of folk are vaping because, I guess, of the benefits
cool.
that you just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Can that be harmful?
Yes, and I say yes to, again, it's not something natural that's supposed to be in your lungs. So, however, it may seem cool and it may taste great because they can put a great taste on it, like you drinking a slushy or eating a popsicle and it tastes good. Doesn't always mean it's good for you. So it will definitely harm your lungs over time. And because vaping is so new, there's still a lot of studies being done. Just like it took many years for us to realize with tobacco products that it's probably not so cool anymore, and it's not fashionable, and it's really causing things like cancer and other stuff that happen. So that verdict's still out because it's still really new. However, my motto is, if it ain't supposed to be in there, don't put it in there.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about prevention, education, and cessation.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about, you've talked some about education,
Mm-hmm.
that you shouldn't have it, blah, blah, blah. But talk about cessation. Smoking is an addiction? That's a question.
That is correct. And I talk that every day with the patients that I talk to. I'm pretty blunt and upfront when I talk to a patient that I'm taking care of, that obviously is there because they smoke and have damaged their lungs, and they come in and they can't breathe, and They're having a hard time breathing, so therefore I come in and I have to do things to treat people, take care of them, make them feel better. Preaching, you should stop smoking, is not always what someone wants to hear. Most individuals know
Yeah.
deep down that's probably not the best thing they should be doing.
Okay.
It's harmful. However,
Well,
you know, I don't live with them. I don't live their life and I don't walk in their shoes. So I'm pretty frank with saying when you make that decision and you're ready to stick with it, I'll be there to help you. I'll be there to help guide you, give you some tips and some techniques, and it's not going to be easy. Most of the time, most patients or people that quit, they may take multiple times for them to actually succeed because it is such a strong addiction. Think about somebody that is playing the lottery or going out gambling. You know, it's easy to say, oh, I'm not going to do that anymore. Then you get in with the same crowd of people, it's friends, oh, well, I'll do it this time. It's like anything that you do, you have to have a stronghold and a resilience to say, I'm just not going to do this. But unlike some of those things, you also have to have things in your arsenal to kind of help you succeed. So that's where I come in.
okay, now what are some of the steps and materials and psychology and programs, etc., that are available to help a person quit smoking?
Well, first of all, nowadays you have nicotine patches that help with the chemical side of it. Because if somebody's smoking, they're inhaling that nicotine and your body's used to it. It's kind of like quit drinking sodas. You got to wean yourself off, right?
You get addicted to them too?
You can get addicted to them too before you realize it. So whatever you do, your body's got to realize, hey, I'm getting rid of this, I got to cut back. So nicotine patches are typically the first thing that most patients need to kind of help them succeed and get over that hump because they're needing that nicotine in their body that they're saying, I'm not going to get that anymore. So those are good. Not only nicotine patches, but there's nicotine gum. So you can have it in a couple of different avenues to basically slowly wean your body and your system off of that chemical that it's used to. Techniques like sucking on lollipops, having candy, because some people not only have the nicotine problem, but it's I got to pick up and smoke a cigarette after I eat, or I do it in the morning and I do it at night and I do it after lunch and I do it after breakfast. So that process, they need something to fill that void in that time. So that's one way. There's a lot of information online nowadays. There's a quit line, especially Georgia has a national hotline that's a quit line that you can call for assistance. And it's not just sometimes the physical, the chemical part, but the stress of life can sometimes weigh people down and make you give in. So they need that emotional, that psychological backing as well.
That's what I was going to ask you about. Now, are there any activities or programs or initiatives? This is a call to action.
A call to action.
This is a call to action.
A call to
I'm
action.
your host, Alex Habersham, interviewing Ms. Valerie Fox, respiratory therapist, and we're talking about smoking and effects on the lungs and things of that nature. But let's talk a little bit about, are there programs to help psychologically? I mean, can a person go to a class, or is that, like Alcoholic Anonymous? Is that,
Smokers Anonymous?
Smokers Anonymous, yeah. Are there group sessions or anything like that?
There are programs. We have a program at our hospital to aid patients or individuals, even in the community. It's a free program that's funded to help smoking cessation, and it's courses. So when I say courses, it's over like several week period of time, classes to help with like I said, the psychological part of it, the stress, learning how to change your behaviors and adapt yourself to get rid of that bad habit. But also not only that, but to help you with those other things like the chemical aspect of it, the part that your body's craving, and how do you do that with assistance medically versus also mentally.
Okay.
So yeah, there are programs, and we have one here. There's some throughout Middle
So if
Georgia.
a person was interested in applying for that program, how would they, contact you, or the correct number, or the website, or what have you?
It is through the Cancer Center. Now, I do not have that number on me memorized
That's all right.
right away.
All
We
right.
normally give our cards out, so I don't
Yeah,
have them
yeah.
memorized. But you can always call our pulmonary rehab program, which we work with a lot of patients there that have had damage to their lungs over the years, either from smoking or other things that they have to come in and actually have rehab for. And so that program,
Can your lungs improve?
your lungs don't really improve when the damage is done. However, it's stopping the process. So if your lungs, you started smoking at 20 and you smoked till you were 40, you're not necessarily going to make those lungs
not
go
gonna
back.
regenerate.
It's not going to regenerate better than 20-year-old lungs. However, stopping that process from worsening is the biggest part of it.
Yeah.
So pulmonary rehab is Monday through. They have a program at the hospital. It's
So
Monday
they
through
can
Friday.
actually attend physically?
They can actually attend physically, and then we have a connection with the Cancer Center for the smoking cessation classes, which are typically after hours, and that number is 633-9090.
Right, right.
So they can call that number and they can help direct the patient.
And then, but vaping, no, it hasn't been determined yet how much
harm? Yes,
It
yes,
doesn't.
yeah. We are seeing some things in literature.
Yeah, I
termed
saw
as
some way it was affecting
popcorn.
the person's brain.
And it does, and honestly, smoking in your body can affect your brain. Why? Again, it's decreasing your oxygen level, and your body has to have oxygen to feed it to work. If you ain't got good oxygen,
Yeah.
your brain's not gonna work. So,
Well, I'm certainly most appreciative
mhm.
for your coming and explaining and educating the community on breathing, which is very important, the things that are good for breathing and the things that are not. And give that number again, just if somebody wanted to inquire
I sure will.
about more information. Give us that number again.
It's 633-9090.
And anything that relates to Navicent, then you can always call the switchboard
That's correct.
at 478-633-1000.
1,000.
And then you can get information from that. This is a call to action.
A call to action.
I'm your host, Alex Habersham. Having interviewed Ms. Valerie Fox, respiratory therapist with Navicent Health. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for imparting the information, and what you're doing is very, very crucial and important to the community, because I know part of your mission, and I could tell that you're really concerned to help all of us lead healthy lives. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
This is a call to action.
A call to action.
I'm your host, Alex Habersham. Have a great day.